going from building to building. Mrs. Johnson had a very definite purpose in that.
Really?
Perhaps you wouldn't have realized that. And also, and there again in your high school years, I think it was changed, but you had an academic subject, always followed with a creative subject.
Mm-hmm.
And you had no time for study periods. And the homework was only Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and not until you got into high school. Now, if you had high school...
I don't remember.
We didn't have any homework until we got Miss Borum, and she was such a, not Miss Borum, Mrs. Boyce. She was a real public school teacher that I felt.
And what year was
She
that?
loaded the homework on. 5th and 6th, it was Third Life, it was in this room.
Well, that was definitely, if she had read Mrs. Johnson's book, she would not have done that if she really believed in the philosophy of
Now, I remember that was the first time, we had a lot of homework, we had it on weekends too.
Were teachers at Organic required to read 30 Years with an Idea? Isn't that Mrs. Johnson's book?
Oh, yes. And also Youth in the World of Men, which was her first.
Were they, when we were in high school?
No, the teachers.
I know, were the teachers supposed to read that when we were in high school? Was it a requirement then? I know it was earlier on.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
And
That was one of the things that
I don't
just
think any
got-
of them now in the
Yeah.
existing school, not one of the faculty members, to my knowledge, have even read either one of the books.
Mm-hmm.
So as you making your statements, and you both have children, or a child, I think it would be wise for you both to read those books, because it's you young people who are going to make a change and demand changes in the educational system and understand why it has to be and how it can be. In today's world, kindergarten children are brought to schools early as 7:30 and picked up sometimes as late as 5, and actually are in one great big building and sometimes don't even see the outside that length of time. Now, personally, I think that's a real tragedy.
Well, there was a thing on the news, and I wouldn't go too far off, but it was a report, and it was a national report. Children today have a much lesser, there is no, I've forgotten exactly how they worded it, but the quality, when we were growing up, it said kids growing up 30 years ago, the overall quality was far superior to what kids are getting today. It listed the reasons they thought why, too, but it was really interesting.
And that was also interesting, the way you said there was a path when you were in kindergarten and First Life building. And you just didn't, your whole world was separated, really, from the others. And then even when you were in Third Life, Second and Third Life, and junior high, you still had that transition feeling when you went into the high school as a freshman. There were 3 distinct groups, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And there was a purpose.
Yeah, Second and Third Life pretty much stayed in the Bell building, I think, except for maybe ceramics.
We go out for ceramics and folk dancing and shop.
But it was this building, and First Life was across the path, and high school was not in the Bell building anymore.
No.
Well, remember they did put junior, one time there was a short time
In this north wing.
North wing, that 7th and 8th grade had
For a while.
a homeroom there at one time, but that wasn't, I mean, it wasn't even a full year, I don't think.
Right.
Was folk dancing required when you were in school?
Oh yeah, it was the PE program.
Did you?
Later in high school, I think it was optional, wasn't it?
Not well after we left, but it wasn't.
Okay.
Unless if they had a problem, a person had a problem taking the class, it ended up that, I mean, they balked about it. They either had to go, the parents had to go through the board or the round table or something, but they had to be there. They didn't always cooperate, but they had to.
I remember Aunt Piney stomping her foot when we didn't pay attention on that hardwood floor.
Everybody remembers that. I think that's one of those strong memories.
Did you have manual training in those days? Shop work?
We had elementary school, didn't we? And that was as far as it went.
I remember going to shop very early, 2nd grade, 3rd.
But not in high school?
No.
And you know, there again, the whole
Close to
philosophy of Marietta Johnson was based on the first, she really would prefer the first subject of the day to be manual training. The whole thing was worked around the arts because she was a great believer in the activity and in the arts and the creativity. And she would say 40-minute periods academically are quite enough. And if they can't absorb it in 40 minutes, they shouldn't even, if the teacher is good, they shouldn't even have to have homework. And all we want to do really is to teach them to know where to go to get facts. But we want to teach them to learn to think. So I'm awfully sorry that you two did not have an earlier exposure to the magnificent philosophy.
I think some of the things that we had in high school, the fact that we were there in the elementary school, well, I think a lot of stuff in high school at the time we were in elementary, were still pretty strong organic, true Mary Johnson organic. And we had a lot of memories of how things were. And so when we got in high school, he and I were a lot of times having to fight to keep some things alive. I know I had to fight like crazy to get some of the really fun, entertaining folk dances performed. There were some of the standards that kept falling back on, but we wanted to do, I can't remember all the names, but remember the one that there was a Tear and Tell the girls had done, and there was the Witch Doctor dance. And a lot of the ones like that, we had seen it when we were little and we were waiting to grow up to do, and they weren't going to do them. And we had to really push to get those in there. So,
It gave you a challenge for good leadership very young, didn't it?
one of the things the school did is they had great activities. Remember how it was a town event when we had Halloween Carnival?
Yes,
and
it
each
was.
school had a booth, and you spent the entire day, or even the week, maybe planning ahead, and that entire day building the booth. So we learned carpentry skills and how to make do with odd materials, cardboard and stuff, and we put on plays. One year we did a skit. Of course, the school had years of tradition, had done Little Nell, but at that time they wouldn't allow us because it's a shotgun wedding, and that wasn't proper. So they wouldn't allow us to do Little Nell, but we did another one. And field day, and there was cleanup day. Those were always great days because we felt like we were in charge. Cleanup day, you cleaned up your area of the school and you painted and repaired, raked. And field day, you had, the great activities with your class and stuff like that. Those were wonderful times.
You brought back a memory. I think someone went around putting little signs on things to clean up, like they do at the church.
Yeah.
I remember the bamboo pile you referred to a while ago. There was a little sign there, rake around the bottom of the bamboo or something.
Yeah. And those were family days too. I remember in elementary school, the school home was there at lunch on cleanup day and on field day. They had all this food that everybody would eat, go to the porch. And the school home was really nice. I remember that. And we used to go up there for lunch in elementary school, and that was a really nice place.
I remember the day Cummings Hall was torn down. I was standing, I don't know if the school home was still there, but I was standing about where the front of the school home would be. And the bulldozers or whatever they were had cables tied around a few of the timbers, and they backed up, and there was a loud crash, and the whole roof came caving in. And it didn't strike me at the time, except a big cloud of dust, and it was neat, but I thought, that's the end of something. And the Cummings Hall just seems so huge. I think now it'd be like a basketball court.
With a little stage at the end.
Yeah, a little stage at one end, but it seems so huge.
And you couldn't hurt it.
Yeah.
It was a building you couldn't hurt.
I think it was solid.
It was solid.
Timbers.
You could hammer a nail anywhere you wanted. You didn't have to worry about it. When we'd have the carnival, we had the haunted house in there. In times, you could hammer a nail anywhere you wanted. You didn't have to worry about it.
Did you realize that we only have 2 of the original 10 beautiful buildings left?
Really?
And that's the old high school building. That, by the way, was high school, as you remember it, but that was the first manual training building, which is now Dahlgren Hall. And that's the building that Kenny and I restored in the late 70s.
It's changed a lot. Have you
And,
been in there lately?
Well, that's a true
A
restoration.
couple weeks ago.
Yeah, they put a kitchen in there.
And then the Bell Building is the other one, and these are the only 2. And our diorama shows the way it was way back in Mrs. Johnson's heyday. But I'm getting a feeling that you both were very happy in school.
I was, yes. I was just happy-go-lucky all the time. Most of the time. I never got real deep into anything. Maybe that was my fault, but yeah, I remember a lot of good times. I don't have any
That was very
real
good, but
negative
I really
experiences.
feel like from the 7th grade up, I did not get a Mary Johnson education, and I feel cheated, to be quite honest. I feel cheated that I did not get what she had to offer. And even though I have not read the book thoroughly, I have scanned through it and read parts here and there, and I've heard enough from different people and had enough elementary school teachers that I thought who taught her And I read Paul Gaston's story on her and that kind of stuff, again, to give me an idea that I really in high school did not get that, and I wish I had. I would feel like I would be, would not have felt being such a difference from going into college if I had that. Because organic, up to before that, had a great list of people who had gone on to colleges and done extremely well. And my brother's one of them. He got his doctorate, and he went, all the way through school, but he graduated long before all those things deteriorated. So, anyway.
Well, I'm glad Pagan's brought that point out, but that's also very sad. So I challenge both of you, though, as parents, to investigate a little more. And if you have time, I know you're both very busy, but to visit the schools and find out what some of the problems
Well,
are.
I'm already very active in the schools publicly and here on the public, working with the arts quite a bit. And since my daughter is only 5, I have gone through several preschools, and I have pulled her from schools that I don't think is proper. I keep quite a close eye on that kind of thing.
One term that Pagan kept using, elementary school, which is foreign to our vocabulary in those days. We always called it the lower school in the structure.
I may not have called it that then, they may not have, but since I have worked a lot in the public school system, it's become my vocabulary. We didn't really have, they have, we called it junior high when we were junior high, didn't
It
we?
was another.
I think so.
Yeah.
By the time we got to junior high, it was junior high and high school
Yeah.
and elementary.
Yeah. And of course, in the high school in those days, there were no electives. The academics were required subjects, including 4 years of language, 2 of Latin. Mrs. Johnson did, for a very short time, tried nursery school, pre-kindergarten. And she watched it very closely, and she felt that it was wrong that children left mothers that young. And she went back to saying, no, we will start with the kindergarten age. And I know people realize that. Of course, we didn't have daycare centers in those days.
Mm-hmm.
But if we
It's
have
really hard, though. It's really hard for people today. I'm very lucky. I spend an awful lot of time with my child. She's only in school half days now, but even she's just now 5. And before that was very little. And my best friend has to work. Her child is dropped off at 7 in the morning. She picks them up at 6 at night.